Many potters preferred solitude, which was why Sal's Brooklyn studio offered a half-dozen private rooms carved out of the old warehouse space. Later, to cater to the dating scene, he had added a few larger ones advertised for couples. Back in his art school days, Julian had always worked in the main communal area. The private rooms cost a premium he couldn't afford, and besides, he had found that watching others was the best way to learn and find inspiration. Sal, the studio's owner, had been happy with the arrangement. Julian's easy smile and natural charm were a magnet for aspiring female artists. Some had even learned his schedule, timing their visits to coincide with his. But after Julian broke into acting, he always booked a private room to avoid causing trouble for himself or for Sal. This was the first time he had ever reserved a couple's room. He'd said he was bringing a friend, but Sal's curiosity was piqued. He sent his students off to practice on their own and settled onto a stool by the front door, nursing a lukewarm coffee. When Julian's guest finally came into view, Sal felt a flicker of disappointment that it wasn't a woman, a feeling that was instantly replaced by something else entirely. As they approached, the man beside Julian seemed to warp the very air around him. A powerful, magnetic presence that demanded attention despite his understated features. Space itself felt compressed in his vicinity. Yet Julian, standing right next to him, was utterly unaffected, chatting and laughing as if nothing were out of the ordinary. As Sal unlocked the door for them, he knew this was no ordinary friend. Julian handed Conrad a canvas apron. He suggested that Conrad roll up his pants and take off his button-down shirt, assuring him that the studio's climate control was excellent and he wouldn't be cold. Conrad complied, revealing a white tank top stretched taut over a muscular frame. Julian's gaze flickered away, a warmth rising in his cheeks. He now understood the appeal of the couple's room. He sliced 2 square blocks from a large slab of clay with a wire cutter, placing one in Conrad's hands and instructing him to knead it into a sphere. He then led Conrad to a potter's wheel. Julian pointed to the concentric circles on the metal plate. He explained that the goal was to slam the clay directly onto the center, and he demonstrated with a sharp, clean smack. Conrad copied him, his aim surprisingly accurate. Julian wet his hands in the adjacent water basin. He told Conrad that the next step, centering the clay, was the hardest part. As he pressed the foot pedal, the wheel began to spin. He explained that by placing one's hands on the clay, one could feel the wobble, the imperfection of its position. The objective was to eliminate that wobble completely. He advised Conrad to watch him first. He braced his elbows against his hips for stability, leaned in, and applied slow, steady pressure. Soon, Julian's clay was a perfect, symmetrical dome, while Conrad was still wrestling with his lopsided lump. Julian, his hands coated in a thin layer of muddy water, propped his chin on his fist and watched Conrad's look of intense concentration. He could watch him play in the mud all afternoon. He had known this would happen. Centering was a skill that required experience and a delicate touch. For casual visitors, especially those with less physical strength, the studio staff usually did it for them. Julian, however, had a mischievous desire to see Conrad struggle with a lump of earth. To his surprise, Conrad had a natural feel for it. After 20 minutes, he had it mostly centered and asked if it was good enough. Julian rose and moved behind him, leaning over Conrad and wrapping his arms around him to place his hands over Conrad's on the clay. Before he could apply any pressure, the wheel stopped spinning. Julian laughed softly, reminding him that it needed to be turning for him to tell if it was truly centered. He felt Conrad's breathing grow heavier, but the wheel whirred back to life. Julian's fingers interlaced with Conrad's, guiding his hands on the spinning mound. Muddy water slipped between their skin, splattering against the wheel's basin. The sensation was unexpectedly vivid, slick, with a fine, gritty texture that amplified the feeling of skin on skin, of friction and flow. Julian forced himself to steady his own erratic heartbeat, focusing on making the final adjustments. He could have just asked Conrad to move and done it himself, but a scene from an old movie had flashed in his mind, and now he was here. It was a blatant act of flirtation, and he knew it. But now that he had started, he wasn't sure how to proceed. To cover his awkwardness, he focused intently on the clay. Conrad's hands were rigid. Julian applied a little more force. Just as he felt the clay finally settle into a perfect center, it flew off the wheel entirely. In the next instant, he found himself pinned against the wall behind him. No words were necessary. A storm was brewing in Conrad's eyes. Their breaths mingled, hot and heavy, and Julian felt a dizzying certainty that he was about to combust. His mind was a kaleidoscope of conflicting impulses. He wanted something to happen, yet he knew this was not the place. He could already feel the faint touch of Conrad's lips against his own. Just as he parted his lips in anticipation, a knock came at the door, followed by a young woman's voice. She introduced herself as Lizzie and asked Julian if she could borrow a set of trimming tools. Conrad released him. Julian let out a breath, a strange mix of relief and disappointment settling in his chest. He called out that he had 2 sets. Lizzie asked if she could come in to grab one, explaining that the main studio was short. Julian told her to come in, as they wouldn't be using them today. The door opened and a young woman with bright, curious eyes stepped inside, her smile revealing 2 deep dimples. She gushed that she hadn't seen him in ages and had been reduced to watching fan-made supercuts of his scenes from Shanghai Shadows. She asked if he had seen them, calling his performance epic in a rapid-fire burst. Then her torrent of words ceased as her gaze fell upon Conrad. He was staring at her, his expression thunderous, his eyes cold enough to freeze water. Lizzie flinched, turning back to Julian as if for protection. Julian's smile was as warm as ever. He promised he would check out the videos. He then casually asked if the studio was so busy that they were running out of tools. Lizzie, flustered, remembered her pretense and mumbled that it was pretty crowded. She made a hasty retreat, telling them to enjoy their time. Once outside, she found Sal. She whispered that the man with Julian was terrifying. Sal asked if he had kicked her out. She said no, but that his stare made her skin crawl. Sal recalled something Julian had said when he was making a set of sake cups a while back. He had mentioned that the person they were for was intimidating, so he had to make them perfectly. Sal wondered if this was the owner of those cups. Inside the room, the heated atmosphere had cooled. Julian retrieved the wayward lump of clay, slapped it back on Conrad's wheel, and expertly centered it for him. He returned to his own wheel and began demonstrating the basics of pulling up the walls of a pot, watching as Conrad slowly formed a small, wobbly bowl. Julian advised him that for the first time, the goal was just to get a feel for the clay. He showed him how to raise the walls and then press them back down, him not to make the base or the lower walls too thin. Conrad followed his instructions but remained silent. Julian wondered if he had upset the man again and tried to lighten the mood. He remarked that he always found working with clay to be incredibly therapeutic, that focusing on the spinning object seemed to empty his mind. He waited, but Conrad didn't respond, and Julian felt a pang of disappointment. Then Conrad spoke, his words completely unrelated. He stated that he had a bad temper. Julian paused, then gave a slight, assenting nod. It was a strange impression. He thought of Conrad as short-tempered, yet in their time together, aside from occasional roughness in bed, Conrad had been gentle with him. He tolerated Julian's jokes and clever remarks, which was why Julian felt so comfortable letting his guard down. Conrad wasn't looking at him and didn't seem to expect a reply. He continued in a low, even tone, explaining that while he was much better now, his adolescence had been a disaster. He recalled frequently wrecking his own bedroom and getting into fights at school. He described it simply as a manic disorder. His mother had noticed early and found him an excellent therapist. By college, he was mostly recovered. The information was a lot to process. Julian's hands stopped moving on the wheel. He wondered if Conrad's recent public altercation was a relapse. He questioned why Conrad was telling him all this. As if reading his mind, Conrad continued. He assured Julian that his condition had been stable for years, though there had been a recent fluctuation. He was already back in therapy and didn't anticipate any major issues. But he wanted to add a condition. He told Julian that if he ever felt Conrad was losing control, especially during sex, his first priority must be to protect himself and to tell him to take his medication. He explained that the act of taking the pill was a psychological trigger that was very effective for him. Julian had once played a character with bipolar disorder in a small indie film and had done extensive research. A wave of complex emotions washed over him. The clay pot he was shaping collapsed under the sudden, unconscious pressure of his fingers. Conrad's case sounded like a milder form of the disorder, exacerbated by the typical turmoil of puberty. Getting professional help at that age had been crucial. Mild bipolar disorder didn't have to severely impact one's life. Many famous creatives even attributed their bursts of genius to manic episodes. Some researchers even theorized it offered an evolutionary advantage. If there was a significant downside, it was the potential for uncontrollable impulses. He thought back to a few minutes ago, when Conrad had him pinned against the wall. Was that it? Was that why he had hesitated? He had needed Julian to understand the situation first. Conrad had no obligation to tell him any of this. It was likely one of his biggest secrets, something a rival could easily weaponize. By sharing it, he was offering Julian a profound level of trust, a trust intended to mitigate any potential harm to him. Julian opened his mouth to speak several times, but couldn't find the right words. Finally, he managed to say that he understood, that he would remember. Then, trying to lighten the weight of the moment, he added that Conrad's wild side was actually quite sexy. He mused aloud what it would have been like if they had met in high school, wondering if their shared penchant for fighting would have led to a classic case of enemies to lovers. He was about to say more, but Conrad silenced him with a kiss. He asked if there was anything that needed to dry. Julian explained that today was just about getting the feel for it. They could start making actual pieces next time. He took both his and Conrad's lumps of clay, pressed them together, and dropped them into the recycling bin. As Sal watched them leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that the magnetic man's aura was different from when he had arrived. Conrad didn't even wait until they were back at his penthouse. The moment the car was on a quiet street, he raised the privacy divider and pushed Julian down into the seat. There was a half-second of stillness before his mouth descended, seeking Julian's with a desperate urgency. When Julian began to respond, Conrad's tongue darted past his teeth, igniting a tremor that ran through them both. Julian knew the tinted windows made the back of the car an opaque black box to the outside world, and his inhibitions evaporated. The tangle of their lips and tongues sent his mind into a whiteout. When he resurfaced, one hand was on Conrad's back, the other unzipping his pants. Conrad's breath hitched. He asked if Julian was in such a hurry. In response, Julian slowly withdrew his hand, the corners of his eyes and mouth curving into a mischievous smile, his tone utterly innocent. He apologized, asking if he was moving too fast. After that, he wasn't able to smile again. Merely stifling the sounds that threatened to escape him required every last shred of his willpower. Conrad was an inferno, threatening to burn away the last of his sanity. When he finally collapsed against Conrad's shoulder, his breathing ragged, he realized the car was parked in the private underground garage of the Arcadia. The driver and bodyguard were nowhere in sight. Later, lying in the vast bed in Conrad's penthouse, Julian thought that he would have to be in an unimaginable amount of pain to remember to tell Conrad to take his medication.